Hello and welcome back to our channel, Pay Down Debt Solutions. I'm Jen, and today I want to talk to you guys about interest rates. So I've been getting a few comments and actually a couple emails that I've gotten also regarding interest rates on credit cards and, interest rates in general, but the focus has been on interest rates on credit cards. So I do want to discuss this with you. And so what people have been saying is that they feel like the interest rates are much higher than the rates that we're portraying. But what I can tell you guys is this is exactly what I'm seeing. This is what you guys are bringing to us. And yes, there are some really high interest rates out there, and we'll talk about those. And we will talk about how they affect your credit card and how, whether or not velocity banking works when you have high credit cards, okay? So today we're going to visit that. We're going to talk about these higher interest rates and how we then approach them and what we do with them. All right. But let's kind of get into interest rates in general for a few minutes and let's just talk about that. Okay. So credit card facts. Okay. Let's go over some credit card facts. So the average credit card rate in 2024 was 21.59. So it's pretty much exactly what we've been seeing. So that is not uncommon to me at all. All right. So about 21.59 is the average. And so we know, and this is very interesting. I find this fascinating. And this was as of 2023. Couldn't find any newer data on that. So if you guys do find newer data, then post it for me. Put it in the comments. I'd love to know, what the newer data is. But let's get into it, right? So 45% of active credit cards carry a balance as of 2023. So if you guys can find more recent information on that, then please, by all means, post that for me, okay? And then credit card interest rates are tied to the Federal Reserve prime rate. So oftentimes the question is, well, what determines these credit card rates and why do they go up? Well, they can go up for a number of reasons. But number one is that they are tied to the Federal Reserve prime rate. And so you might be X amount above the prime rate, or if you're really lucky, you might be X amount below the prime rate. So that's also a possibility. We don't see that a whole lot, but it is possible. Now, the APR margins have gone up, and that is driven by increasing subprime accounts and accounts that carry a balance. So we know that the APR margins on these cards are higher due to the subprime market, okay? And so subprime meaning, below what prime is, okay? So subprime is, our mortgages that are, basically for people that have lower credit ratings, they're considered subprime. So anybody that has, below 700 is typically considered a subprime, rate, okay, a subprime credit card rate and credit. So what causes higher interest rates on your credit card? So what is it? What causes that? Well, so again, it is tied to prime, right? So as prime goes up, you're going to see these credit card rates increase. But also there are a couple different things that can cause that. Now, when you carry high balances from month to month, that can increase your credit rating. Okay, so I'm sorry, your credit card interest rate that can increase your rate. And also missing your due date even by 1 day can cause your credit card to increase in rate. Now, that's a really crappy thing. And I myself personally have seen that in my card where I missed a due date by 1 day. Remember, there is a grace period here. So I was within my grace period, but I missed that, that quote unquote due date by a day, and they jacked my interest up, which really annoyed me. So you guys, if that happens to you, by all means, you call and you beg that rate down, right? So you call that credit card company and you tell them that you've been loyal card customer for X amount of years. You pay your bills. Don't even mention the fact that it was late. You pay your bills and this one time your credit card rating went up. Let them tell you why. And then just say, you know what? I've been with you guys X amount of years. Can you please waive that for me and drop it back down? You'll be surprised. A lot of times they will do that for you. So that's exactly what I did. I called and negotiated that. And also late payments, right? Again, missing it by 1 day. It's funny because Dan and I have a business card, American Express card, and we always think the due date is the day before it's actually due. Like I think the due date's the 17th and we always think, the due date's the 16th and we always think it's the 17th. So we have done that before. We've paid it late and then we get a late fee on top of it for 1 stinking day. And that drives me nuts. So the first thing I do is I pick up the phone, I call them and I'm like, you know what? Take care of this for me, please. Do it nicely, don't be too pushy about it. But They will. They usually do knock that fee off for you guys. So there's no sense in not doing it. You may as well call and see if you can get that, that fee removed or that rate lowered. Do it, I say, all the time. Just like when you get a traffic ticket, right? So if you get a speeding ticket, always try to negotiate your way out of it. Always try to fight that ticket, because you know what? At the end of the day, if you can lower that and get rid of your points, man, why wouldn't you, right? Why wouldn't you? So always try to negotiate that down. Now, interest rates are driven up when there is a high demand for credit or loans. So that's another reason. So if there's a lot of people out there, and we know we're in a bit of a crunch, right? People are struggling. They're struggling in many ways. Just going to the store and buying eggs, for example. Oh my gosh, have you guys noticed that? I think the last time I went to buy eggs, it was $11. That's ridiculous. I've never seen that before. So little things like that, right? So when it's harder to, when you have more people demanding credit, right? They need credit. That's also going to jack the rates up, because, those banks have you between a rock and a hard place, right? They know you need that credit, so then they can increase the rate, and you're probably going to pay it anyway because you need it, right? So that's another thing that will cause your rates to go up on credit or loans, all right? So, going into me just a little bit, I like to tell you guys, those that are new to our channel, that my name is Jen. My husband's name is Dan. We created Pay Down Debt Solutions to help you guys learn a different way of banking. So all of you out there are traditionally banking for the most part, unless you found this channel and learned to do this, and hopefully you are. So traditional banking does nothing but make you and keep you payment poor, okay? So we want stuff. We all like to purchase stuff in our life. And so when we do that, it causes a problem. And that problem is called a payment, right? And then we end up being payment poor, because even though we might have a little bit of cash flow and we think we can take on one more payment, we do that and then we reduce our cash flow. And then when you guys have something happen every month, when something comes up, my example is always my daughter's winter tournaments that she does that are, $350, right? Poof, gone, right? So if you have $300 or $400 in cash flow, that's gone with, one thing you might want to do for your kids, or, something that you guys want to go out to dinner, or you go out to dinner a couple times, and that stuff is gone. Or the unexpected, tires on your car, you need an auto repair. Maybe you have you got to get a bridge put in, something like that, right? So these surprise charges are what hold us back. And so we were payment poor, and we are business owners as well. So when I left the bank, I took on and I became my own boss, and I took on some businesses. And Dan and I, started these businesses and probably did them a little bit too quickly, because we ended up in a payment poor situation. And while those businesses were growing and becoming successful, that was really great. But in the meantime, we were strapped, and it was really uncomfortable for many years, okay? Until I learned a different way to bank. And what's funny is, coming from the banking world and being a branch manager and being a banker, I didn't know about velocity banking, because the banks don't know and your bankers don't know. So when you go into a bank and you ask them for these wonderful things called lines of credit, right? And they want to sell you a loan instead, they want to push that loan on you, you say, no, thank you. I'm looking for a line of credit, and you go for that line of credit, no matter how hard they push you guys, because they will 100% try to talk you into that loan over that line of credit, and don't take it, because that loan will do you no good. And I'm going to show you why that is in just a few minutes, because we are going to go over high credit card interest rates. So I want to show you how you can use your credit cards to help pay down your debts, even if you have high credit cards, okay? Even if the interest rate is high on those, I'm going to show you can still use velocity banking, and you can still be incredibly successful with it, all right? So in going on with our credit cards, okay, and learning there are different types of credit card interest, okay? And so now we know that credit cards and lines of credit are figured on the average daily balance, okay? It's simple interest, and it's on an average daily balance. So what the banks will do and the credit card companies will do is they're going to average the interest charge based on your balances, right? Your balances over, from one statement cut period to the next. They're averaging it, all right? And that's what allows us to use velocity banking so effectively. And so it's amazing when you do this, and you will learn and how to create from zero cash flow or negative cash flow. I can get you positive in cash flow just by rearranging things, doing nothing more than you're already doing right now, using all the things you're already using now, using the debts you already have. I can show you how to gain cash flow and get yourself out even when those interest rates are high, okay? So we know that the different types of interest rates are variable rates, fixed rates, and then there's intro or promotional rates, okay? So variable rates are exactly that. They're variety, right? They vary. So APRs can change over time based on the prime rate. And so all your credit cards, for the most part, I shouldn't say all of them because not all of them are, some are fixed. Most of them are at a variable rate and they follow prime. They're going to be X amount above prime or it may be X amount below prime, okay? Usually it's above because we all know they're much higher than the prime rate is. So they're going to be usually above prime. Now, then there are fixed rate cards, okay? So with these 8 cards, the APR is not set by an index, such as prime. Prime is actually an index, right? They can increase due to late or missed payments. And so even if you have a fixed rate card, that card can change if you miss a payment. So you have to be careful and you have to read your fine print there because that could still change on you. Just like it happened to me down here where we missed our payment or our due date by 1 day and they jacked my rates up. And then another time they tacked on a fee, or to really add insult to injury, they'll tack on a fee and raise your rate. So that's happened to me before too in my life. So again, always call and beg those back every single time. Don't miss doing that. All right. And then we all know my favorite right here is our intro or promotional rates. I love credit cards. I have said this a million times. Credit cards, I think, are fantastic. They're great tools. You can use them in velocity banking, and we do use them in velocity banking every single day, okay? And what's great about these cards is they actually can help you combat interest because you get rewards for them, right? There's a lot of rewards cards out there. And if you're going to make a purchase anyway, you may as well get points back. Like look at the Amazon Prime card. That one's great too, right? Because everybody buys from Amazon. Who in this world doesn't? Almost everybody. And so you're getting points back every time you're using that card. And if it's stuff you're going to purchase anyway, then why not take advantage of that? And that's what I say, every time you can get a points card, you should do it. So long as it makes sense if you're doing the math on it and it isn't costing you money to do that, right? Okay, so we have different rates here. We've got our variable rate, we have our fixed rate, and of course we have our promotional rate. Again, one of my favorites. Now, when we're working with credit cards, okay, and a lot of you out there have high, credit card rates, and a lot of them are high because you are maxed, okay? So when those credit card limits get high, your number one, your rates can go up. 2, you're probably maxed out. So I want to make sure you guys are following the micropayment strategy. And I'm going to show you right here how we do the microcard strategy. All right. So if I put my handy dandy little board up here, we talk about our microcard strategy. Now, this is my very rudimentary calendar, right? Serves its purpose, pretty much suits it, right? Because we have our 4 weeks and we have our 7 days. So that works out for us. All right. So let's say we have a credit card and we know that we want to overpay it doing the velocity banking way, right? So running our strategy through this card, let's say we need to put $1,200 on this card, okay? So if I need to put $1,200 on this card and my card is maxed, it's at a high balance, okay, that limit, it's just about at its limit or it's at its limit or maybe it's over its limit. I know that I am at risk for if I slap down $1,200 on this card, my credit card company is more than likely going to react. And how are they going to react? They are going to lower that card limit on me, which then hurts us, right? Because if we do velocity banking properly, then what we're doing is we are running all of our expenses through that card. So we need to have leeway there to be able to do that. And so we also want purchasing power. So we don't ever want them to cut our credit card limits on us because we want that purchasing power for later on if we need it, all right? So if I have to put $1,200 on this card, what I'm going to do to micropay this properly is I'm going to take $1,200 and I'm going to divide it by 15, okay? So I'm going to divide it by 15 days in the month, all right? So every other day I'm going to be making a payment. So initially, when you start this, it's pretty good to try to do it every other day. Here's what's going to happen for you, okay? Here's the great thing about this. Number one, your card then should not lower on you. They shouldn't lower that that limit on you because you're not making a chunk payment. And it is an algorithm that catches that, okay? So if you make $80 payments, let's say you make an $80 payment this Sunday, and then you make an $80 payment this Tuesday, and then you make one this Thursday, you make one this Saturday, you make one this Monday, this Wednesday, and this Friday, okay? And you carry it on, right? You keep going with it, and you put your $80 until you get to 15, okay? So that'll be approximately the $1,200 that you need to put on your card. Now, what this will do is, number one, I have seen this work for people over and over and over again, where their credit card score it raises, right, between 40 and 100 points, okay, almost overnight, it seems. Okay, not overnight, but whatever, like within a month or two, okay, your credit score will go up quickly. And I've seen it happen, even though they try to say, and they being the infamous the credit card, the people that own their credit cards, the banks that own these credit cards, and the credit card reporting agency says that doesn't work. Well, if it doesn't work, why do I see evidence all the time of this happening for our students, right? They're all of a sudden, they call me up or they send me an email and they're like, hey, Jen, I can't believe it. My score jumped 40 points or my score jumped 60 points. I've seen it happen over and over again. So what that will help do, number one, is it'll stop the algorithm from lowering that limit on you. And number two, it should raise your credit score, okay? I've seen it over and over again. So make sure that if you are running cards at the limit, that you're using it this way. If you're starting Velocity Banking, I really want to impress upon you guys to use the micropay strategy. Then you can start to back that off after you see how your card is reacting, okay? And if it's not reacting, awesome. So then back it down to like every 2 or 3 days and put a little bit more on that card every 2 or 3 days and see what happens. And then you continue to do that as the months go by until you can eventually get to the point where you're making larger chunk payments without it being a problem, okay? So just wanted to caution you about that, because I do see that happening when people make, a chunk payment of $1,000, $2,000, all of a sudden, boom, the credit card company is going to drop that limit on you. And I just don't want to see you have that happen to you. Okay. All right. Let me get rid of this. I'll be right back. Okay. So now that that's out of the way, let's go over credit cards are one of the key tools we use in Velocity Banking. Okay. It is one of the key tools we use in Velocity Banking because in Velocity Banking, we are using lines of credit, right? We're using lines of credit to work down our finances, right? To work down our debts. And we do that because we are going to park our paycheck right onto that line of credit. And that paycheck then is going to work all of our balances down in that card. And while it happens, right, we're also paying our expenses out of that card, all of the expenses that are chargeable that we are able to pay out of that credit card. Again, you're going to be buying gas. You're going to be buying groceries. These are the things you do every single day. And you're going to be using that debt destroyer, which is the credit card you're running it through. You're going to use that debt destroyer first and move it on through that debt destroyer, okay? So you can use them, the lines of credit, these credit cards, to work down your debt, your loan debt, your line debt, your other credit card debt, and even your mortgage debt. You can actually use them to work down your mortgage debt, okay? A little extra step there, but it's awesome to be able to do this, right? Because you will save so much money if you can do that. Now, I'm running 2 scenarios here that I want to show you how we can work this with high credit cards, right? So if you have credit cards at 24%, if you have credit cards at 27%, some of you out there have credit cards at 30%, and I get it. And so I know that becomes difficult because yes, those interest rates are high and it can make it very difficult to try to get ahead. So this is how we do it, right? Here's the strategy. So I'm going to use scenario 1. And in this scenario, we have an income of $4,200. All right, so $4,200 is our income. We have a total expenses of $4,100. So what does that mean we have in cash flow? What does it mean? We have $100 in cash flow, right? So $100 positive in cash flow. Not a bunch, but at least we're not negative, right? So we're going to take it. Now, these cards are high, all right? So we have rent at $900. We have a car payment at $300. So those total $1,200 a month. Now we know we cannot pay those through a credit card, okay? Or we shouldn't. Let me put it that way. You can use something like Plastique or one of those apps out there that allow you to pay your expenses through credit cards, the ones that aren't chargeable through credit cards. They will allow you to do that, but they charge a fee. So unless you're doing a one-time big chunk payment using Plastique, don't do it monthly, okay? So what you're going to do is you're going to hold out those expenses. You will hold them out from both your income and your expenses, okay? So that you can, because you know that you can't use them to pay on that credit card. So this is what this looks like, right? All right, so $1,200 is our rent in our car. We know that we're going to call it card one because, again, it's a hypothetical. So we're going to call it card one, and we're going to call this card two. So card one is at $11,000. The payment that this person is making is $262 a month. And it is at a 24% interest rate, so it's pretty hefty. Their total payback on that is $13,220. And I believe it's over an 8-year period of time. Let me just double check that. And I lied, that was 9 years. Okay, so, and this is over 9 years, right? So I'll just write 9 on here, 9 years. Okay, and then card two is at $8,000 balance, okay, $8,000. The payment on that is $200 a month. That is at a 27% interest rate, so it's fairly high, okay? And so the payment back on this one, and this one is actually 8 years, is $12,696. So that means combined, if you were to let this term out, okay, and you were to continue to pay these small payments every month, all right, that means that you would pay back $25,916 in interest that would become out of your pocket. You would throw it away because you're paying the bank a bunch of interest, right? Now, that was on $18,000 of stuff you bought, okay? So whatever, for whatever all intents and purposes, whatever it was stuff you bought. $18,000 turned around and cost you almost $26,000. All right. So then what do we do if we have high interest rates like this and we have a big interest chunk that we have to pay back at the end of these terms? Well, we can run a credit card strategy on this, okay? So what we're going to be doing is running all of our expenses through one card at a time, okay? Now, there are split card strategies. There's all other different kinds of strategies you can use, but today I'm just going to use one card at a time, okay? So I'm going to start with that $11,000 card, and we are then going to run our strategy down, and we're going to start with this card first, and then when that card is paid, we are going to move on to the next card, okay? So here we are with $100 cash flow. We are going to then hold out of our income $1,200, okay? And then we're going to also hold out from our income $200, all right? So we hold out the $1,200 and the $200, and then that means that our chargeable expenses at this point are $24.38. Now, why am I holding this out? I'm sorry, my income is $2,800. Sorry about that. So my income is $2,800 because, again, I have to hold this out of my income because it has to pay through my checking account, right? And I have to hold this card too out of my income because I have to pay that through my checking account. Now, what about this one here? Why do I not have to worry about that $262? Well, the reason is because when I'm using this card and I'm parking my paycheck onto that card, so what does that look like? That looks like your direct deposit coming into your checking account. You then hold out your rent and your second card here into your checking account, and you pay those 3 bills out of that, okay? And then you are going to make a payment of the rest of the money from your direct deposit onto this card right here, okay? So the rest of the money goes onto this card. So that means $2,800 then is what I'm working with. That is what I'm able to work with. Now, this is actually coming back to me as cash flow, okay? So here's what happens. So now I don't have to hold this out of my income is what I'm saying. I don't hold this out of my income because I'm actually using it because it is now inside of my card, okay? It's inside of my card. I don't have to pay it because I've overpaid that card and satisfied that $262 payment. So that doesn't apply at this point. Now, we also have to hold out our expenses. Okay, so we have to hold out from our expenses. We have to subtract them from the $4,100. We subtract out our rent, our car, our card 1 and our card 2, because no matter what, they're still expenses, right? So those all have to come out and be held out of our expenses. And so the rest of the money then is chargeable. So when I subtract from the 4,100, this, and this, okay, or the payments, I mean, then this is what's left over, and those are chargeable expenses. Haircuts, bills, groceries, gas, insurance, okay? All of that then is being paid out of this card, all right? So now I have to figure out what my interest is, right? Because that card has a 24% interest rate. So now I need to figure out my interest rate. Well, how am I going to do that? And I know those of you out there that are velocity banking, experts or seniors here, right, in our school, you're seniors, you kind of get it, you know how this works. So what happens is I'm going to take my high balance, then I'm going to take my low balance, 11,000, my low balance is 8,200. I'm going to add them together, and then I'm dividing them by 2. That gives me an average, because remember, cards are figured on an average daily balance. So I'm getting my average. Once I get my average, I'm then going to multiply it by, our multiplier in this case, remember 24% is going to be 0.24. So I'm multiplying that average by 0.24, and then that number is a year's worth of interest. I don't want a year's worth of interest. I only want 1 month, because I'm starting this out. This is month 1. So I divide it by 12. That gives me my 192. That's the interest rate that we're working with for month 2. So here's what this looks like. So I have now, I start with 11,000. I subtract my income, my available income. And then I get $8,200. Now I have to add back in my chargeable expenses, because I'm charging throughout the month, right? All the expenses that can go through a credit card, I'm charging those out. So now I have to bring in my charges, and I have to bring in my interest. So that brings me back from my $8,200 up to $10,830, okay? So it's lower than the 11,000 because we've already worked down our balance in month 1. We have worked it down. All right, month 2, that direct deposit comes in. My available balance, again, hits this card, drops the balance to $8,030. I'm starting that with $8,030, and then my chargeable expenses come in, and then my interest comes in, right? Okay, so you can see how my interest is already dropping because my average daily balance has now dropped, right? And so then I come back to 10,656, and I again have dropped it from the 10,830. I'm now at 10,656. All right, so you go on and you continue to work through this, okay? And I work through that so that it takes me 35 months to do, okay? So it takes me 35 months to work this down, and I've spent $4,146 on just this card. Once I'm done with this card, I then work on card number 2, okay? So then card number 2. So card number 2 comes in, and that card is at $8,000, right? $8,000, and then my new available income is $3,000. Why is it $3,000? Because now, remember that $200 that I had to hold out is now gone because it's inside of this. So now I only have to hold out $3,000 from my expenses. Or I mean, I can work with $3,000 for my expenses or my my direct deposit, right? Because I make $4,200. So all I have to hold out is $3 now. All right. So all I'm holding is this. So we have now our new card that we're working with. We've subtracted our income, and now it's down to $5,000, just like that. Average daily balance drops. And so I'm going to take my high, I'm going to take my low, I'm adding them together, I'm dividing them by 2, right, to get the average. Then I'm going to multiply it by, now this is card 2, it's right here. And that one is 27%. So that means I'm going to multiply it by 0.27 to get my interest, all right? So my interest then is $146 for that 1 month. Remember, add them together, divide by 2, multiply by 0.27, divide that by 12 is going to give me then my 146. And so you run your strategy down that way. All right. So this strategy here for the second card, it's the same strategy, it's just the second card, it's 11 months. It takes 11 months to get that one done. It takes 35 months to get that done. And it takes, for this card here, it's $1,052. So my total amount for these two cards, right? And we're going to see this in a minute. My total amount is a heck of a lot less than the $25,916 now, isn't it? All right. So that's my first strategy that I'm working with. And that's with $100 of cash flow. Now, let's say we are negative. Here's scenario 2, right? So let's say we're negative by $50. We're negative by $50, and we have to figure out how we're going to get ourselves cash flow and if we can even do the strategy. Because if you're too negative, when you have high interest rates, it's going to be really tough, guys. It's going to take a long time. Or you might not be able to do your strategy because it'll be increasing. So if you are negative, but you're not severely negative, we can still work this strategy, okay? So we can still work with you on these, depending on how negative you are and depending on what these interest rates are. So again, we're working the exact same strategy, but we're doing it now with the total expenses of $4,250 instead of $4,100, all right? Which means that we're negative here. So if we run our strategy down the exact same way, doing it the exact same way we did up here, but with a cash flow that was different, that was negative, remember, we're gaining cash flow because these come back to us, okay? And they come back in our income, all right? So $2,800 is what our income is still with this, because remember, we're still using the same card, still using the same amount of income. And we run this down, okay? So we run this one down. Then we're going to take our $8,000 from this card, and we have, again, $3,000 that we're using, okay, to run this down. What is different here are my expenses, right? Because my expenses are figured on $4,250 instead of $4,100. So this is a higher number, okay? So that is where the difference is for the majority of this, right? Okay, so again, we're working our strategy down, right? You can see it's the same interest rate. All of that's the same. What is different is the total expenses now, all right? So what does this scenario look like? Now, let's take a peek. Let's look at what this all looks like for us now at the end of the day when we have looked at these two different types of scenarios, okay? All right. So in our first scenario, and sorry, scratched it all up a little bit here for you. All right, so again, remember it was 35 months plus 11 months, so it takes 3.8 years, right, total. And we have spent a total of $5,189 as opposed to almost $26,000, 25, what is that, 916, all right? Why the heck wouldn't you try Velocity Banking after seeing this? Knowing you're in a strategy, or you have a strategy now that you can work your finances where you're not taking 9 years, 8 years to get this done, right? Why wouldn't you do this? It is amazing. Now, when we look at our second strategy though, when we're upside down by 50 bucks, things look a little different, don't they? So at the end of the day, and again, I'll just say you've saved over $20,000 here, right? Okay. So here, it takes you just to do card one, right? Because of that negative 50, it takes us 112 months and we've spent $15,363 in interest, all right? So in interest alone, we've spent $15,363. However, it's still lower than the $25,000, isn't it? It still could work for you, right? Now, when we bring in that next card and we work with the next card here, okay? So we do this card first, then we bring the next card in, all right? This takes 112 months. This takes 16 months. So that is a total of 10 years, 10.6 years, okay? So that is longer than this, right? Because we have 9 and 8 here. It takes longer. However, you still save $9,022 even though it takes you longer. So this strategy could still work for you even if you're upside down. But we have something called our maxed card strategy, and I've talked to you guys about this before. This is how I would run the second scenario if I'm upside down. I begin with this card, okay? When I get to about 12 months, depending on what my credit score is, and typically when you're in a maxed card strategy, like this student scenario is, right? Their credit's dinged. They probably can't get a 0% credit card at this point. But in 12 months, I can guarantee you they should be, unless something else has happened, right? Unless something else has happened with their credit and somehow they got more dinged along the way, this should help repair them. So they will get to a point, and hopefully in about a year, maybe less, depending on where their rate is, right? Where their score is. They would then, after a year, apply for a personal line of credit or a 0% credit card. And it just depends on which one we think we can get earlier. Now, I would probably go for the zero card because those zero cards halt the interest, right? So you're automatically halting the interest on that. And all you're then doing is working down your strategy and all your expenses through a 0% credit card. So you wouldn't have interest here. It would be zero, right? The only thing you would have would be that convenience check fee. And that would be 100, maybe 200 bucks, just depends on what the convenience check percentage rate is. So that is the maxed card strategy, where you work this down, okay? And once you get to the point where you can get a zero card, you can move balances over. Now, whether you continue to work this strategy down and put the other card on 0%, that's up to you at that point. That's where you have to do the math on it and figure out what's the best strategy there. But at that point, it isn't going to take you 10 years because that 0% card, you might have to do a couple 0% cards to flip the balances to get it paid down, but it's going to cost you a lot less at the end of the day. And you've already flipped that negative into a positive and you're running things down, halting the interest with that 0% card. I hope you guys have learned something today. I hope you see that even if you have high interest rates don't scare me. They really don't. The harder part with the higher interest rates more is where you're sitting, if you have any cash flow or if you're negative. The more negative you are, the harder it is to get that strategy to work. But there are options. We give you choices. You guys, it's up to you to make the changes. So I hope you've seen that with those high credit cards, you can still get this strategy done. And I will see you on the next video. Have a great day, guys, and please like and subscribe. Thank you.